Hello and welcome to back to Talkin Pitch Side. I'm Tony and I am solo casting today. No PJ with me today. He is, how do you say, in places we've never been before, eating sandwiches we've never heard of, or something like that. He's out of town this week, so I'm holding down the fort. Exciting time in MLS at the moment, so I'm worried for him because he's going to miss a lot, and I think he's going to be awful jealous of us that we get to talk about this. Obviously, we've got MLS All-Star Game coming midweek here. I'll be talking about that a little bit, not too much. But also, we had a full slate of games this past weekend that we're going to dive into a little bit, as well as some news and notes, nothing major. But I think the trend's going to be as the transfer windows open, we're going to see new signings trickle in here or there. Some names that have popped up that I think do matter, and some outbounds as well. So I'll touch on these real quick and we'll hop into these games. The first is that Colorado Rapids are finalizing a deal to get a new attacking midfielder from France. Youssef Maziz, I believe is how it's pronounced. This is really the section where I'm just going to mispronounce every name I've seen because this is the first time I've ever heard of him. So we're going to go with that. But big chance creator, supposed to help out Paxton Aronson in the attack. He's a TAM level player, I believe, so won't take up a DP slot and does make that Colorado offense a little bit punchier. Moving up to that, we've also got Portland Timbers. They're signing a Dutch forward, Vincent Janssen. He's 32, also won't be a DP, and coming from Royal Antwerp, though maybe formerly known a little bit better from Tottenham and Monterey, or places that he's played in his career. So another interesting one to watch, especially when we've got Kevin Kelsey, who's really been taken off for Portland, and obviously the story we'll talk about a little bit with Felipe Mora on the way out. So definitely one to watch as well. And then I think the big one, and we'll use this to transition in the games, but Charlotte's going to be selling Kerwin Vargas for a $6 million fee, which seems like a very, very steep number for him. I think that's good business for Charlotte, and they have a hefty sell-on clause. Kerwin Vargas had plenty of moments with Charlotte. I think that there were definitely times when we saw his ceiling in MLS, but at the same time, I mean, if you can get a good fee like that, you're going to move on from him. And I think that overall, Charlotte fans are feeling a little bit bummed by this and a little bit, I guess, opportunistic at the sense that this was probably the right time to sell. So definitely going to miss Kerwin Vargas. He's had his fun moments, but that's going to transition us into the first game of the weekend. We had Red Bulls hosting Charlotte. And this is a game where it really felt like it was probably over after the first 15 minutes. Charlotte strikes really quick twice in the 7th and 12th minutes. And from that point, they really hit the brakes and kind of sat back. Red Bulls tried to do their thing and break things down, but Charlotte, for what they are a pretty strong defensive team, and we're able to close it out. A couple notes on this one. Obviously, we've seen some inconsistency in the Red Bulls' performances. I've talked about how the young players, sometimes that'll happen. There are certainly learning lessons that they're going through. Mehmeti can probably tell you all about him in this game. He does get a red card from 2 yellows. His first yellow he got was pretty tactical. Honestly, not a bad card to take. He, basically stopped the breakaway and let the team reset. Very smart foul. The second one, however, though, was him arguing with the ref about a foul that did not involve him, kind of persistently and enough to get another yellow and get sent off. So very silly. Definitely something you look at and say, okay, that is an error that a teenager makes, and that's certainly what was there. So a lot to be disappointed here with Red Bulls. They definitely did not show up to this game awake as it started, and Charlotte had enough to steal 3 points on the road and cruise along. So that's the talking points from that game. We'll move on to a game, regretfully, that I have to talk about now, which is the Hell is Real Columbus edition. This game definitely lived up to the Hell is Real intensity. You're never going to get let down when you watch these matches. That being said, FC Cincinnati came out the gates hot, did really well, possessing, creating opportunities, and eventually Denke puts one away. And at that point, and I'm talking eventually, it was like 10 minutes in, probably the first 10, 15 minutes, it was all FC Cincinnati. And then from that point on, it looked like the team had left, and Columbus just took over. And we've seen this from Cincinnati in times, especially a lot last year, where they get in these positions that it just looks like they can't string together more than 3 passes. Nobody's confident holding onto the ball, taking anybody on. And I mean, Columbus just took it and ran with it, created a lot of pressure, did not let Cincinnati be comfortable with the ball in their own half. It's really that the turnovers that had them scrambling a little bit. Obviously, a penalty, which I've seen people argue about whether it should have been a penalty on Matt Miazga. Coming from a Cincinnati fan, I think it was a penalty. I mean, it's just kind of boneheaded to go to ground in the box like that. Clearly, Arston was looking to draw that foul, but at the same time, I think that you blow that whistle regardless of where on the field that is. And so, I mean, to me, that's a straight penalty. The other side of it too, Miles Robinson kind of getting beat on a corner kick, and TRA was able to really head one in. And at that point, like this was kind of a weirdly open but kind of like tough fought game where Columbus was getting opportunities, but not quite getting the look that they want. And it led to a lot of shots, a lot of camaraderie in the defense, but it's just too little too late. And this defense has been a big part of FC Cincinnati's issues, is that while the offense has done great, the defense has struggled mightily. And it's just been another example of that today, or on Saturday, that is. And really, this thing got capped off with a Dado Valenzuela red card for violent conduct. Some interesting kind of conversations swirling that. So, I mean, the play itself was that, he swung, I believe, at Habrun towards the end of the game, just kind of right behind, not studs up, but definitely not great intent, went and swept Habrun off his feet. And immediately, like, crew players are coming over. And at this point, too, like, a lot of frustration with FC Cincinnati. I think they know they played a bad game, and you kind of see that. It looked like they'd given up for the most part. Evander's ripping off shots from way far out and not even getting close, and passes just weren't connecting, and all those things. So I think a bottling up that just resulted in this foul. And then a big mass confrontation where everybody's pushing and shoving. I think a little bit of the controversy of this was that it seemed like there's angles where Alan Chapman, the referee of this game, had his yellow card out to give it to Valenzuela. Of course, couldn't yet because everybody's swarming around him and they're still pushing and shoving. So he's kind of waiting for that to peel off. And then it changes and he hands out the red. So I think there was a little bit of a difference. They're officially calling it a straight red. However, it kind of felt a little bit like maybe it was a double yellow. The foul itself, I'm not sure. I'd given it a red card straight out, definitely a yellow. And then the activities afterwards and him jawing off to some of the crew players and saying, "Hey, meet me in the locker room," and all of that. It could have been that second yellow. And then, of course, that was pretty much at the very end of the game when the whistle blows. Everybody darts to the locker room and it's game on. There's only one, maybe two angles of like footage within that tunnel, and it kind of seemed like security had pretty much separated the two teams, but they were definitely jawing off, and it was a very tense moment for a little bit there, wondering if you were going to get a big fight. So it doesn't seem like that was the case. I'd be interested to see. I don't think we've heard anything from the MLS disciplinary committee yet on if there's any fallout from that. I'd have to imagine there's got to be at least some fines, and I'm sure they're sifting through all that right now. That being said, it makes the next fixture here very tasty. Obviously, that these are two teams that don't like each other, but just seeing the passion and the intensity and the rivalry definitely makes it interesting. Argument to be made too that you should have seen that passion and intensity on the field during the game and not at the end and in the locker room. But that's just kind of where it is at the moment. So definitely one for a neutral that was very exciting, very open. Obviously, like I said, these matches never let down. So definitely circling the reverse fixture here in a few months. But we got to keep moving on. Next match to talk about, and honestly, not a whole lot to talk about, but Montreal played host to Miami. Of course, this is Miami without the big dogs. Messi and Rodrigo Paul still recovering from the extended World Cup run. So you get a lot of the backups involved with Miami today, but when you have a guy named Luis Suarez as a backup, you're still probably the favorite in this one, especially against this Montreal team. That being said, Montreal actually had some really good looks. They generated more XG than Miami, 2 XG, and was able to kind of find a few fissures and cracks in Miami, but obviously not enough to exploit and get a result out of it. Miami, on the other hand, I think the talking point here really is, there was a scary injury with Berterame, just a head injury that had an ambulance drive out onto the field. It sounds like he is stable, which is great to hear, because that you could definitely tell a lot. The players, coaches, everybody was pretty shook up by that and watching that. So it's good to hear that hopefully he's got a quick recovery ahead of him. And that being said, Miami takes care of business. I know that, you look at this game and say Miami probably should have dominated more. But a mantra that we kind of live on at Talking Pitch Side here is like, you just got to take care of the bad teams. Like, you get 3 points, you've done your job. And that's what it was here. So it wasn't pretty for Miami, but it certainly effectively acts the same as if it were. So with that, we'll keep moving. DC United hosted Toronto. 2-1 victory for DC United based off a late penalty from Ty Baribo. The guy can't go away. He's going to be hanging around the Golden Boot picture really all season. He's found plenty of his opportunities throughout the season in DC. And honestly, I think the bigger picture here is Toronto. Obviously decimated by injuries, and it's just been really bad luck, honestly, at this point. I mean, since the restart, they've been having to start a center back, Jackson Gilman, who really has not played MLS minutes too much. He was mostly playing in MLS Next Pro, but that's how far deep they are in some of their depth chart. Is they're pulling guys up just to start because of the amount of injuries and absences that they've been experiencing. So it's felt like a shell of a Toronto team for a really long time. Some of that probably not in their control. And that's the unfortunate part. But, I mean, they struggled to get points at home. And we talked about this. They had a ton of home games before the World Cup. Now they're going to have a lot of away games, and you're making it tougher on yourself. This is certainly not helping yourself either. So hopefully better things to come for Toronto. Mihailovic starting to get minutes, come back on. They need him desperately. Josh Sargent didn't travel in this game, which was pretty interesting. So a lot of the big names not quite there up to speed yet for Toronto. DC United, I think, just flexing a few of the muscles that we've seen them kind of add this season, in the sense that they haven't made huge moves. I think Baribo is probably the biggest one you could argue, and they've just been quietly raising their floor. And they keep doing that, and I think a higher floor is what gets them result in this game. Is they were able to rely on their spine and trust their process in getting this one across. So, congratulations, DC United. You keep improving on us, and there's still ways to go before I think we can consider them a very strong playoff team. But it's certainly a ways from where they were as a wooden spoon contender. So, we'll move on. Another, speaking of wooden spoon contender, it's unfortunate, but Atlanta United's in that conversation at the moment. Just nothing can go their way, including a 4-1 loss at New England. This was scoring by a committee for New England. Obviously, Carlos Heel, your best player, if you're a New England fan, he finds the score sheet first with a nice finish. But Dort Turgeman's on there, Peyton Miller's on there, Brooklyn Reigns is on there. I believe that's his first as a New England Revolution player. So they really spread the love, and you got to figure it out. Again, this is another match for me where I look at it and say this probably speaks a little bit louder about the losing team, despite the losing team losing a lot. It's not going to be Atlanta's year. Latte Loth, just not there. And it has to be one of the worst signings that we've seen in this league. They're Atlanta's feeling the repercussions of it. I think that they've kind of admitted they're in a bit of a rebuild. I mean, they've totally swapped out a lot of their defense and their goalkeeper as well. But it's a long road ahead for them. New England, on the other hand, I mean, we talked about their table position being really sneaky. They were third going into the resume of play, and they're still holding that spot now. There's a pretty sizable gap between third and second for them. But I think that being in third place is still a very solid spot. It's hosting a playoff series. Obviously, a lot of games still to be played, but not many people were probably predicting that New England would be at this point in the table in third place. So, and if they were predicting that, then that means that they're a Revolution fan. So it's been impressive to see this turnaround. I think they've been quietly good, very solid. They haven't made like a super big statement win. I don't think we've really seen that. But they beat the teams that are worse than them, and that's part of the reason why they're there. So certainly an impressive result that they've racked up. And we'll move on to two teams where we're seeing some real trends start to come out here with New York City and the Chicago Fire. New York City, this is a true 6-pointer, by the way. New York City ends up victorious 3-1. I think the main talking point here is Nico Fernandez' goal, which was just a beauty of a hit. Probably going to be goal of the week. I did hear somewhere that the ball was traveling at 78 miles per hour off his foot. That's how fast his shot was. Don't know if that's confirmed or not, but just an unreal long distance strike that was just an absolute rocket. So if you haven't seen that one, go check that one out. Definitely one of the best goals scored so far in the season, but definitely this week. So big part of it here. The main trends I want to talk about, Chicago have returned from this break and starting to fall pretty flat. They don't get Lewandowski until the second half. He doesn't start in this one. Not sure what the reasoning was there. Obviously, the swap with Lewandowski and Kuipers. I'm not sure that there's enough data out there yet to say that this handoff has been rough. But it does seem like Lewandowski needs a little bit of time to get used to this. He's played about a game and a half now, and has generated a little bit. It's not like he's put together complete stinkers, but at the same time, he's filling some very big shoes, which is wild to say. And any big performances out of him, and it's just not quite there yet. So Chicago definitely is one to watch to see if this, basically, I don't want to call it a money grab, but this big name move, this big fame move, and then boxing out like your Golden Boot striker. I know they tried to keep both, but there are egos and emotions on the line, and obviously that was just not going to work. And it'll be just really interesting to see if kind of this big play ends up turning around and firing back in their face, because so far these first few results have made it seem that way. In New York City, on the other hand, obviously adding Benny Traore, didn't get to see much of him in this game, but another designated player. Obviously, Nico Fernandez has been lights out. There has been reporting that maybe he's on the move. That's certainly something to keep an eye on, but for now he's playing. And certainly New York City is being the beneficiary of that. Whenever he's on the field, he's been fantastic. So, one team trending up and the other team trending down. Chicago still holds fourth place over New York City, but certainly one to watch here if Chicago is going to fall off the throne a little bit, and where New York City's surge kind of ends up taking them. So we'll move on to another match, which actually may or may not be the surprise of the week, I would say. So Philadelphia Union hosting Seattle and winning 1-0 over this Seattle team that has really struggled since the resume of play. They showed up to Cascadia Cup and got their doors blown off, and since then have not put together a winning result, or even a drawing result at that matter. They're losing to Austin and now losing on the road to Philadelphia, who is a team that definitely, if this result would have happened before the World Cup break, I think we would be really shook by. Philly, since the firing of Bradley Carnell and bringing back Kai Wagner, things have picked up a little bit. They're looking a little bit more like the Philly of old. I still don't understand how they get away with this and results like this, but they have. You can't question it at this point. It's one of those things where, when I say you can't question it, you can still question it. I think that there's a good chance that maybe this was a little bit of a mirage or smoke and mirrors, but they're getting results against teams that they shouldn't be, and especially when you've had that rough of a beginning of a season, you're trying to get every result you can just to go your way, so that we're not talking about you in the wooden spoon race. And it's looked good so far, resuming play. Another shout out here, Philly player was Neil Pierre, 18-year-old center back, looked really good in his debut. Obviously worked his way up the ranks for the academy and now starting to get first team minutes. So that's a young, exciting name to talk about with Philly. On the other side with Seattle, obviously struggling results. I also a hard one to put your thumb on the pulse of, like, how does this team go, kind of into this depth here where it's just like they can't string anything together, and it's been falling apart pretty frequently. I will say, last year was a little bit reminiscent of the lineups they were putting out. A lot of the main guys were hurt, and so it was up to the backups. And the backups, for what it's worth, held their own very well. Obviously, didn't win every game, but still won a lot and made Seattle look like they were a process team. That it was, you can't beat the way we play. And now a lot of these guys are coming back. Jordan Morris has been back. Rusnak has been back. Even Areola, he started this game, and it just kind of feels like collectively everybody lost a little bit of a step. And I think that may be kind of what's happening here, is that the Stars, just don't quite look like themselves after their injuries, getting older, slowing down a bit, and Seattle's really paying for it right now. It's been tough to deal with. So we'll see if this is a general recovery thing and, or a rust thing, and Seattle's just got to shake that off. But it's been a rough go of it these last few weeks. So 3 straight losses since coming back from the World Cup. It'll be interesting to see where Brian Schmetzer and the Sounders go from here. So moving along, we do have a Texas derby here. Houston playing Austin and winning 3-0. And really pretty quick succession, 3 goals in the first half, 2 by Bogusz and 1 by Guilherme. This Houston team looked very impressive in this game. I think that the main takeaway for me, if you watch all 3 of these Houston goals, it's very direct play, it's very quick counterattacking play, finding balls over the top, finding space in behind. I think that you can make some points about Brad Stuver being a little bit too glued to his 6-yard box or to his line. Maybe he could have came out and at least broken down some angles of some of these shots, or potentially sniffed some stuff out and made a clearance and let his team reset. But yeah, it just was not good defensively for Austin in this game. And that's been a little bit of the backbone of what they've been relying on. But I think the highlight of this one is certainly Houston. Some really good team ball here. I thought that they looked very good in this. And then, of course, sniffed out a lot of Austin's attack once they kind of went up 3-0 and let off the gas a little bit and played a bit more conservatively. Obviously, Austin did get, some chances here. But at the end of the day, like Houston did a great job of minimizing them. And certainly Houston was the deserved winner here. So congratulations to everyone involved there. Next match here, Minnesota United versus Vancouver. This one ends in a 0-0 draw. Honestly, not a lot in this game. And I think part of that is the shocker that there's, not anything to talk about. I think that Vancouver, since returning from the break, has been a little bit flat, especially offensively. We talked about Seb Berhalter getting sold to Middlesbrough last episode, I believe. And, the punch that he brings in that midfield and just the energy. I mean, he comes up forward and he's contributing attacking-wise, but he's also tracking people down and really putting in defensive shifts too. And it feels like maybe Vancouver's missing a little bit of that energy. Obviously dropping points to Cincinnati, which is aging worse now based on that hell is real result. And then also not being able to take on a Minnesota team that just lost to Sporting Kansas City. So not a lot of great comparative results when you kind of look at the transitive property with this Vancouver team. Hard to say. I think just based on where they've been as a team these last few years and kind of who's been shining with them, which is really, the system is what shines. Obviously, they do have some stars. Ryan Gauld's back actually too, and of course Thomas Mueller. But it just feels like this feels like a little bit of a blip on the radar. Vancouver has shown that the process works, and I'm willing to chalk this up to rust. I think they're certainly on like the early stages of fraud watch, and just hey, could the wheels really fall off? I don't think it's impossible. But I'm kind of holding a little bit more optimistic view on Vancouver and thinking that this is just, a bump in the road. Teams go through little lulls throughout the season, and I think that Vancouver is just in one right now, and I'm sure that they'll probably be able to claw back out of that. Minnesota, I guess, where you're at, probably disappointing to draw at home, but you got to take points as they come, and I think against a Vancouver team who's above you in the table, there's certainly some silver linings you can take there. So we'll keep moving here. St. Louis playing host to Colorado. St. Louis winning 1-0. Colorado short a man since the 12-minute on. Rob Holding with the dog so red card pretty early. And it was based off a bad pass that came to him. And Colorado was able to take advantage. And he goes down, fouls the player, and red card. Pretty simple letter of the law. Red card there. Nothing malicious in it. But I think at this point, if you are not Yohan Nemepilled with this St. Louis team, I don't know what else you need to see. They've been on fire recently. The results are coming, I think, even sooner than they were expecting. I believe that they have not lost in their last 9 games, and have won their last 4. So they are red hot right now. Things are looking good for them. Obviously, like I said, I think they're a little bit ahead of schedule. They were going into a rebuild, and you look at this roster on paper comparatively to many other rosters in this league, and it feels like they don't quite do it. But they're still pulling things out. They're getting team goals. They're getting a high press goal, which I think is so key. That was a big ingredient to their first season where they won the Western Conference, was just playing the high press energy during soccer that they'd been, honestly, from an ownership and leadership standpoint, very outgoing about that's how they wanted to play. And have strayed away from that a bit. And now, they're back to their ways now. I think too, part of this is maybe the roster does not feel like it's up to pace, but they're still getting results. A lot of that, Yohan Neme is a Wilfried Nancy disciple, coached under him for a long time with the Crew, and now he's taking the helm and doing his own thing. And I think that one of the strengths with that setup particularly was Nancy took the Crew and the players on the Crew who, there were a few superstars, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, he had basically the sum of their parts outperforming what they added up to. There was individual players that if you put in a vacuum, you would not expect them to put in the performances they did as a Crew player. And I think we're getting a little bit of that now in St. Louis, that the system is able to really emphasize people's strengths and cover for weaknesses and make some players look fairly strong and really good. I know that St. Louis, there's been rumors swirling with them and who they're targeting and trying to bring in. And it'll be interesting to see if there's any big additions this summer. That's the kind of, in my mind, the step away they are is if you're looking at the Crew blueprint, you still need 1 to 2 superstars. You need the Cucho and the Rossi type caliber players, which just aren't there with St. Louis right now. So enough about St. Louis. Colorado, got to talk about them for a second. Mainly just that it's very, to me, they were one of the hardest teams to predict in this league. And if they're going to show up or not, it could be they lose 4-0 or they win 4-0 against any given opponent. And it just happens. I don't know what to chalk that up to. Obviously, there's some great individual pieces in this Colorado team, but it just feels a bit disjointed. It feels a bit clunky. And because of that, their points has suffered. Where they stand on the table has suffered. They're on the outside looking in. They're in 13th right now when it comes to that playoff picture. Only 4 points off a playoff spot, but all that being said, it's probably not where Colorado's expecting to be right now. And I can certainly understand a lot of the frustrations that were popping up. So definitely things to watch there. Exciting moments for St. Louis. Definitely a team that, if you can, you got to put on your screen because they do play some exciting open stuff. And now moving along, I said earlier that I thought that maybe Seattle losing was the most shocking result. This would be the other contender. Orlando hosting Nashville and beating them 1-0 thanks to a Tyrese Spicer 72nd minute goal. This game, well, let me back up. Nashville has shown signs that they've had good results since resuming play, but have kind of shown a little bit of the slowdown. I think there's been times we looked at and said, maybe they should have handled Atlanta better. Maybe they should have won by more. All these things where it's felt slow, but they're still getting results. And, I've already said just today, good teams get results. And that's still true here with Nashville. And at the same time, we saw the red flags just in these first few games that they weren't quite at the speed that they left off to. It sort of feels like the World Cup break was detrimental to this Nashville team and probably hurt them more than most teams because their momentum was great, and they just haven't quite captured it just yet. I will mention too, obviously Christian Espinoza not playing in this game, a huge piece of this Nashville team, this Nashville attack. He has not been a part of the games just yet for Nashville, and so that does really shift the tides a bit when we talk about where they're at. And again, kind of for me, allows like myself to give them a little bit of grace and say, again, rough patch in the season. Not everybody's available, but when we're available, we're red hot, we're super good, and I think that that's where Nashville's at. But this is an Orlando team pivoting now a little bit that even if Nashville was playing bad, which they did, like Orlando would probably drop points normally, especially first half of the season. Orlando would have done that. Griezmann has brought like a new energy just to Orlando, to the stadium. If you watch some of the highlights, you can kind of notice it just feels like everybody's into it a little bit more. Yeah, I think Maxime Crepeau said after the game too, like that he's just brought so much energy that we're fighting with now, and that's been a great thing. Orlando has a huge hole that they dug themselves in that they got to climb out of. But it starts with beating teams that you're not supposed to, and that's what we had here. It's a really surprising result. I think that the intrigue of this is going to be, do these trends hold? Was this a blip, for Orlando, or are they actually serious? Can they knock off some of these players? And then the other side, what are we doing here in Nashville? When are they getting back up to speed? They can't lose too much ground if they're really shooting for every trophy they can get, including the MLS Cup, and the Supporters Shield. So certainly stuff to watch there for sure. Okay, now heading over to our next game, we've got San Diego hosting FC Dallas. I think this is a game that I honestly expected Dallas to really do some damage in. I was mistaken. San Diego wins 1-0. Obviously, they dominate in possession, but like for the rest of it too, I mean, the numbers really point towards San Diego ruled this game. Dallas didn't quite find the rhythm. Peter Musa had a quiet night, which is unusual for him. And I think, honestly, the big difference here, San Diego, another team in the Western Conference that's been struggling a bit. They're addicted to their possession, and a lot of times what's gotten them in trouble is their addiction to their possession in their own half, trying to build up and then having a bad giveaway and then getting punished for it. This game, they're pretty tidy with it. And that was kind of like the San Diego of last season that held on really well. I think that there's an element that they've kind of gotten themselves cleaned up a bit. And it's going to be a little bit harder to beat them. The self-inflicted wounds are going to be a little bit fewer and far between. So I think that was part of it. I think this is a little bit of a blow to Dallas as we view them kind of in terms of power rankings. This is a tricky team. I think that they've, as far as strength of schedule goes, I've seen that they had one of the toughest schedules in the league. And obviously San Diego has been struggling as of late. So kind of thought that you get a more result here, but not the case. San Diego takes care of business at home, and that's wildly important for them. Because they have not been doing that. They've really been slipping late in a lot of games. So good for them to really kind of get it back on their feet. And I know San Diego fans are kind of hoping that they've really got something kind of unlocked with that match. And specifically, like I said, just being able to execute and maintaining possession, being dangerous with possession, but most importantly, not letting that amount of possession shoot you in the foot. So well done by San Diego on that one. We'll move on to probably the blowout of the week, which was LAFC versus Sporting Kansas City. Not surprising to really anybody that LAFC comes away winning 4-0 on this one. Big takeaways on this is Son scores again. I believe this is his third straight match. He's got a goal. And Bouanga gets a brace as well as an assist. So LAFC is really, really good when Son and Bouanga are really, really good. And this is the last thing, if you're a fan of anyone else in the league, you got to be scared now because you're starting to see the sleeping giant awake with Son just getting active, with Bouanga getting active. Sometimes they go through dry spells, but when it's rolling, it's rolling. And it didn't really, Sporting Kansas City was Sporting Kansas City. 4-0 is probably a pretty crazy result. I don't think it mattered what team they were playing on that night. That they put together a complete shift. This LAFC team did, and really show you that they can still be a strong favorite in this league. And when it's their night, they can pretty much beat anyone in this league. So certainly riding that train. We'll see how much that hot hand goes and how much Sun and Boanga keep going. They're going to need a lot out of those two guys if they want to make a really serious push here in the playoffs. But it starts with seeing it hit the back of the net now for 3 straight games for Sun. So absolutely no complaints from an LAFC perspective in this one. So moving along. This was a really fun story match. This is Portland versus RSL. I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning. Felipe Mora, this was his last game for the Portland Timbers. Pretty unique situation where a player gets to play like one more game after like a transfer has already been announced. Typically, you're wrapping that guy in duct tape and bubble wrap and just making sure that he does not get hurt before he comes over, but not the case. He gets his last farewell game with Portland, and basically, Portland goes down 1-0. Sanabria with a nice goal, and then a little bit later on, a kind of harsh red on Gulavogi. Really a little bit incidental, but it was a cleat to the face, and so it's a red card, and Portland's up a man for the rest of the match. Wasn't until the second half where it was 2 corner kicks that Felipe Mora scores not just his first, but his second of the day. It lifts Portland to victory and just puts a really sweet taste into everybody's mouth. I can't picture, frankly, a better farewell match where you go and rescue all 3 points from behind, scoring 2 goals in the second half. So really, really well played by Mora. Obviously, he showed up for it. But, this Portland team, I think the bigger picture was that obviously that red put blood in the water and they went after it. They had plenty of expected goals, plenty of shots. You can really look at this and say, RSL was very, very crippled by that red card, as most teams are. But man, that hurt really bad. And to not have Gulavogi next game is a big shot at RSL too. But big picture here as a neutral on this one, really, really fun storyline, really fun game. If you haven't yet, just go see the scenes of Felipe Mora scoring his 2 goals, and then he gets subbed out not too long after, and just the standing ovation and the emotion. It was a really neat moment. Certainly one to remember for him and Portland fans. And then we'll move to our last match of the day. It's the Cali Classico. This was between San Jose and LA Galaxy in Stanford Stadium, so bigger crowd than normal, which is always fun to see with these matches. I don't know the total number if that's been announced yet, but usually it's in the 40 or 50,000. So, very exciting for that. San Jose, a little bit slowed down on this one. Galaxy show up first with a Paintsill goal. Honestly, Paintsill probably could have had a hat trick with the amount of chances that he had, and there were some chances that were really, really good. That being said, San Jose does find their equalizer in the 63rd minute, and you look at the numbers, and they're pouring the shots on and also getting really good opportunities. I think this is one draw where both teams are probably kicking themselves a little bit and looking back and saying we could have won this game, especially in front of that many fans. It's always a spectacle, but Paintsill particularly, I think, has got to feel that way with some of those opportunities he had. He did not do a great job on his finishing on the night in general. But I think it brings up some bigger picture stuff. San Jose looked a little bit slow since our restart here. Obviously, they were red hot and the biggest surprise of the MLS season coming into the World Cup break. And it seems like now it just doesn't quite have that same punch. And that's a little bit concerning because like we saw San Jose fall off a little bit right before the World Cup. And I had mentioned this in the past, like, when they had to start digging into their bench and reserves, you could kind of really see the flaw in them in their roster, which was it's not that deep. Their top guys are playing really well together. But then once you start dipping into the bench, it didn't quite have that same composure, and really talent. So, to have this, and it's mostly preferred lineup that San Jose's throwing out here, and to have this result is tough. And, I didn't even mention the end of this game. Pretty late, San Jose earns a PK, kind of Marcinkowski going out of his line and causing the foul. And So no other than Timo Werner steps up, which is the guy that you want, if you're San Jose, to take this PK. And he misses. It was saved. And so Marsikowski makes a mistake, but then makes it back up for it and keeps everything generally level. But this was the part of the kicking yourself thing where it's like, that really was San Jose's to win, if you're looking at that moments like that. So I think that they are pretty mad about that one. And again, like everybody's coming after you when you're wearing the crown, and they're wearing the crown. And I think that they just didn't do themselves any favors, really putting this game to bed and really like trying to hold down the spot that they're at in the table. So definitely another trend to watch is if San Jose wakes up or if they start sliding a little bit. Galaxy, I think, have been neither here nor there, struggled a lot just the season throughout. And I think another draw is one of those things where they can't be overly disappointed, kind of given the context of everything. But at the same time, they have just not really had the juice. So certainly one that I think can leave a lot of conflicting feelings. And yeah, for that. So with that was the match week. Was that 16 or 18 or 17? I'll shoot the gap here. So a lot of fun matches. We do have a full slate coming up next weekend, which I will preview on Thursday, or for our Friday episode, that is. We record on Thursdays. So we'll get you covered on that. Between now and then, we have the MLS All-Star Game and the MLS Skills Challenge. To be perfectly honest with you, like, I historically do not have a lot of energy for this match. I think that the Liga MX versus MLS thing has been fun. I think it's the best way to do it. I prefer that than random Premier League team, just because it's way more comparable in the levels and it's not a blowout. That being said, like it's an American sports thing. A lot of all-star games and many sports are struggling to maintain relevancy, to show that they have a point. And honestly, that they're not a cash grab. But I don't know. I just don't get super excited for that. It's not very meaningful. It's very interesting to see who gets voted into these. But outside of that, like I have a little bit of fun with the skills challenge. I think it's fun to watch players and see their personalities come out a bit. But outside of that, it's not something that I get super excited for. It's just this thing. And actually, the interesting thing I heard about this too was the big part, and maybe the surrounding news that we'll get from this is that this is one of the few times a year, or definitely during the season, where every team, including like leadership and ownership, has a chance to meet. So there's a lot of like ownership meetings and like coaches meetings and GM meetings, those kind of things, big discussions about rule changes, about how things are going. Obviously, the calendar flip was certainly just talked about in these in years past. It does sound like there are some people talking about that there's possible roster rule moves coming for MLS, and it's still a little bit vague in terms of what that is, but it generally sounds like it's more buying power. And so obviously that's been something that we've been clamoring for a long time. Is there's been teams that have felt a little bit handicapped by the amount that they're allowed to pay their players and the amount of players that they can bring in. So it seems like that's going to loosen up a little bit. I think a salary floor was also part of that conversation as well, which would be interesting too. Like, bringing the rest of the league up. There's certainly, teams that, and I think we've said this on here before, like there's been owners that, have bought into this league decades ago, and the investment looked totally different, and what they anticipated they would need to invest is totally different too. So obviously, like, their expectations on what to spend on a roster can vary, and it makes sense, like that's just part of the nature of it. Is maybe they don't come from the same kind of money that these new era investors do, and these new era owners do, and so they just can't quite swing the bat the way that others can. So definitely interesting stuff to watch. Keep it on your radar. I would not be surprised if we hear more come out of those meetings, and that's honestly why I'm not going to argue against the All-Star Game, is because I know that those are happening here in these moments. So for that, we'll hang tight and see if there's any news that comes out of it. Otherwise, it's an All-Star Game. We'll have fun with it where we can, but it felt a little bit. I would love to see more matches coming, and we do have more matches coming this weekend. But we got the taste of MLS fully back now, and man, it's been exciting, and I wanted to keep rolling. So we'll get there. It'll be next weekend, and we got an all-star game where we can watch some players goof around for a little bit too. So we still got the content covered, but we'll just have to wait. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the episode now. Thanks for sticking around if you've been listening to me drone on for all this time. But if you haven't yet, please follow us on social media. Please subscribe on YouTube. We got video available there as well as Spotify. We're pretty much everywhere that you can see us. So, yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I'll be back with you guys on Friday. See you.